Will Peter Parker be able to rescue his lab partner Jamie from a life of costumed crime, or is it all too late? And what horrible revelation will the Chameleon and his master have for Teresa? Well, let's hop into the pages of Amazing Spider-Man issue number 69 and find out together, shall we? Alrighty then, so picking up from where the last issue left off, Spider-Man had arrived in just the nick of time to stop the Catalyst heist that was taking place at his college. The Webhead certainly has his work cut out for him right now if he wants to save Jamie, his lab partner, who has gotten himself wrapped up with a bunch of New York's absolute worst. There's the Jack-o'-lantern gang, the Foreigner, gambling-themed villain Chance, and of course, who could possibly forget Slide? Well, everyone can forget Slide. In fact, Spider-Man goes out of his way to say, oh geez, what forgotten villain vault did you crawl out of? Which one are you again? Are you the dirty cop or the engineer who hates me? No, it doesn't matter. You're Slide, you're slippery, no one cares. You know, it's scenes like this that remind me that Nick Spencer is actually really goddamn funny, and he hasn't had nearly as much of a chance to flex his comedic muscles in the last couple arcs, so I'm glad bits like this exist. Spider-Man has harsh words for the Foreigner, too, asking if his confidant and love interest Silver Sable knows that he's graduated from international espionage to bullying college kids. Speaking of Jamie, Spider-Man actually had the upper hand in this battle and probably would have won the whole thing lock, stock, and smoking barrel were it not for Jamie using the fact that Spider-Man doesn't suspect he's in on this heist to attack him. Jamie feels bad about it. It's very clear this poor kid is getting in way over his head, and there's a good chance the supervillains might just throw him away when they're done with him. Now, at the other end of the issue, we have the evolving story involving Teresa Parker. She had come to try and kill the Chameleon, only to come face to face with Carl the Finisher, aka the man who killed her and Peter's parents. The Finisher regales us all with the story of how he actually managed to survive almost certain death when Spider-Man returned his rocket attack against him. He was only nursed back to health with the help of the Chameleon. In fact, it's heavily implied in this issue that Carl the Finisher was actually the one that broke a young Dmitri Kravinoff into the world of spies, crimes, and espionage. I mean, I suppose someone would have to do it, and as far as retcons go, the timeline of events certainly checks out, but more on this story in a minute. Now, Peter picks himself up, dusts himself off, and licks his wounds before eventually going back to Ned Leeds for help. After all, Ned and Betty have both been working this Foreigner case, and now that Spider-Man knows 100% for certain he's the one who's gotten his hooks into his friend Jamie, and probably into the clairvoyant future-telling device, he's gonna need all the help he can get. Betty is naturally worried about Ned getting involved, as he seemingly only just recently came back to life, and they have a baby coming very soon. Honestly, I'm more surprised that Spider-Man was so willing to trust Ned Leeds right out of the gate when he's still not even 100% sure that this is the real Ned or not. You know, I'm sure rash decisions like this won't eventually come back to bite Spider-Man in his red and blue butt, but I digress. Now, back over at the palace, the big supervillain casino, Foreigner and his agents fire up the clairvoyant device. Jamie tells them how to work it, how it's able to determine the future by scanning a bunch of different alternate realities, and then uses that information to correlate the most likely of outcomes. Again, it's all very Rick and Morty style tech over here, but before Foreigner can use it though, his Jack-o'-lantern henchmen and indeed a half of the supervillains that make up the casino's patronage lead a revolt against him. As it turns out, they've actually been working for the Finisher this whole time. How exactly have they been working for a dude who has been presumed dead all this time? I'm not exactly certain, but there you have it. All of these seemingly unrelated stories in Chameleon Conspiracy were actually very related. Now, speaking of Carl the Finisher, all throughout this storyline, he's been threatening to reveal some dark secret about Teresa Parker's life and parentage. To properly explain, though, Finisher has to take Teresa and Chameleon to some creepy manor house like something out of a Hammer horror movie. They're not alone there either, as we see an entire cadre of chameleons. Implying perhaps that Dmitri wasn't the only chameleon, maybe he wasn't even the first, and maybe this has something to do with Teresa as well as the comic comes to a close. And so that was Amazing Spider-Man issue number 69, everybody, and I'm happy to say this issue actually felt more like a real story and less like a writer trying desperately to explain a bunch of stuff all at once. I can also appreciate all these seemingly unrelated plot threads eventually all getting tied together in a nice, if maybe somewhat convenient convenient bow. Honestly, it was just kinda nice and familiar to see Spider-Man stomp some bad guys and crack some jokes along the way. It feels like it's been a bit since we've had such basic Spider-Man goodness. I'm still cautiously optimistic about what might be going on with Teresa. It feels like they've taken 3 issues to build up this big reveal, and at this point, if it's not worth it, it's gonna be really disappointing. Also, despite this whole arc being called the Chameleon Conspiracy, the Chameleon himself is actually a very minor player in all of this. Should also probably say too, today it was officially announced that once Nick Spencer is done on the Spider-Man book, he's seemingly gonna be done at Marvel and at comic books in general, taking a job at a place called Substack, where his new job title will be a lot more corporate, a lot more office-based, but one that will hopefully see him allow other people get to make the comics they've always wanted. This, of course, ends up begging the question for me, was his run always supposed to end at issue number 74, or much like his Captain America run in Secret Empire, is Marvel higher-ups pulling the rug out from under him again creatively? I don't know. For what it's worth, though, I'd feel comfortable giving this issue a 7.5 out of 10, and I hope it can certainly stick the landing after all of this build-up.
Hey there everyone, Cape Joel again, and I want to thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. As always, if you liked what you see, be sure to like, subscribe, comment. It really helps drive engagement and helps me out too. Also, if you are a patron, which you can become for as little as $1 a month, you will get exclusive content that no one else can ever see, and you'll get to see the Comic Multiverse podcast before anyone else too. You can check out all this and more down in the description. And until next time everyone, this has been Cape Joel, and I'll see you all next time. Cheers.